Welcome back to War News. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Today we are going to be covering all the suggestions passed to developers in the month of March for 2021. So be sure to hit the subscribe button. Let's start off with tanks, starting actually with a German one. And I'm not actually going to just talk about how much I hate German. I don't actually hate German stuff. I just find it some of the things Gaijin takes ridiculous. However, if Gaijin were to add this vehicle, I wouldn't think it's ridiculous unless they undertiered it. The VK30.01H, which could be considered a thick Panzer III. It was a prototype heavy tank with 50 millimeters of armor all around and had a few different guns. A short 75, as you see on Panzer IVs, the 105 from the Stu 42, as well as the long 75 from the Panzer IV F2. Personally, I would love to see all three. You could even make one, maybe the one with the 105, a premium. Now, this was only a prototype and not accepted in service. However, the chassis did go on to become the chassis of the Stuer Emil. I think the greatest benefit from this is that it would give German players some early experience with heavy tanks, especially a square one, so they could learn strategies on how to play the Tiger. So less players get into the Tiger without even knowing what a heavy tank is and getting one shot because they show their armor flat on. However, it seems mainly the issue with the Tiger now is everyone has discovered that you can shoot the cupola with a US short 75 and kill like 2 of the crew members. This one would not share that same issue as the cupola. It does not stick out like a sore thumb, though it's only 50 millimeters on all sides, so it would probably be much lower battle rating than the Tiger 2 and probably face some different rounds. I'm thinking a battle rating for these vehicles at most 3.3, as 50 millimeters of armor around there appears on medium tanks. And of course, that would be the one with the same gun from the Panzer F2. Perhaps the 105 one could be 3.0 and the short 75 one could be 2.7. While the frontal armor would be pretty weak at those battle ratings, like the Tiger, if you angled it, you could get in a whole lot, because if I'm reading this correctly, it should have 50 millimeters all around. For Russia is the BTR-90, a Russian wheeled IFV. Yes, please. It's basically just a wheeled BMP-2. It had a number of configurations. Most of them seem to have a fast-firing 30mm gun. I think the same one on the BMP-2. But some of them had equipable ATGMs and even ERA. While the UK definitely doesn't need another IFV, especially one that acts just like the BMP-2, this vehicle is very iconic, especially for those who played Battlefield 3, so it would be a very much welcome addition. It could be a squadron vehicle if necessary, ideally not an event vehicle or premium, but I could see it going there because Gaijin likes to make wheeled vehicles, event vehicles, or premiums. Japan's suggestion past developers was kind of a silly one in my take, though it could be pretty cool if put in the right spot, is the Type 61B, which is a Type 61 with the Type 69, nice, aiming night vision device. It's just a Type 61 with night vision. Having a second one in the tree would have been useful, but we kind of already have that spot taken with the STA-3 having the same battle range, just being better Type 61. So this would be very redundant in the regular tech tree. Now here's 3 possibilities that what it could be for. It could be a GE premium. People who don't want to get through the STA-1 and 2 because they have terrible reputations could just GE themselves a nice 6.7 tank. That'd be a very respectable path to go for Gaijin on this vehicle. Another one is that it could be an event vehicle, being basically a copy paste of a tech tree version, but slightly different, has night vision. It would be interesting. It could give some people a reason to grind out the rest of the Japanese tree because they just got an event vehicle, and it wouldn't be taking away any interesting Japanese vehicles that would be vital to the tree. But I'd take it in the main tree too if they really want to put it there. Folder it with a regular one. China's tank suggestion is actually a pretty good one. It is the WZ-111, a Chinese-made heavy tank. And when I say Chinese-made, I'm not saying it was an IS-3 constructed in China, technically. It's a completely Chinese-designed heavy tank, heavily inspired by Russian designs. Unfortunately, the turret was never finished. It was supposed to have the D25T. Essentially, it was a Chinese IS-3. The armor layouts are very similar, but obviously different. It was made in the 60s. APFS-DS and high penetrating heat FS was coming around. They're like, we don't really need a heavy tank. So they never really got through it with the project, but the chassis still remains in a museum somewhere in China. In the tech tree, I would not want this to be a premium or event vehicle because there is a gap in the Chinese heavy tank line, or whatever line you want to call that. Right after the IS-2, it goes straight into the Type 59 at 8.0 from 6.3. This would be a pretty good 7.7 or 7.3 vehicle. And the Chinese tech tree is in desperate need of indigenously designed vehicles. We have one right here. Let's put it in the game. Sure, the turret wasn't finished, but we have other vehicles that are added despite having less information about them. Can somebody show me an image of the Oswin 2, please? And not an in-game one, of course. For Italy was the Dardo IFE with the HITF-ITS OWS 30mm gun. It is a very modern IFE from 2010. It had, of course, a 30mm gun, as I said earlier, and a dual ATGM bomb launcher that could shoot either spikes, cornets, or INGWA ATGMs. Currently, Italy is without an IFV, so why not add this one? Put it at the end of their tank destroyer line. I'd also like to see with some of their earlier IFVs though. I know they had a few. I think they were missing ATGMs. I can't recall, but regardless, those high penetrating autocannons can be pretty effective at high tiers. Now, the French tank suggestion was technically for the FT-17, but it was actually a cleverly disguised suggestion for World War I tanks, which really, when you think about it, is kind of disappointing that we don't already have those and the game didn't start at World War I, as there's quite a lot of cool looking World War I tanks, and development in between World War I and what we currently have as low tier are not that far off. So it's a bit of a disappointment that they didn't start the game off that way, but hey, maybe in the future we could see some. Anyways, about the FT-17, the only way for it to actually really be effective would be to introduce World War I tanks to every nation and have this at like battle rating 0.0 or something. Another thing they could possibly do is actually add it as a novelty and just give it to everyone, because everyone used the FT-17 in one way or another. And finally, for tanks is Sweden with the STRV-102, which is a STRV-81 with a 105mm L7 cannon, the same one on the STRV-101. I'm totally down with this, man. More sense in game, I can get forward with it. We need to turn this into Centurion Thunder. I want to have a whole battle rating that is only Centurions fighting each other. Actually, when you think about it, this one might be much more powerful than the other Centurions within 105. Because if you think about it, the current reason why the Centurion Mark III is because of the way the mantle is made up of multiple different plates. It makes it really hard to penetrate it with the way Gaijin models volumetric shells. In actuality, the shell would find its easiest way through the plates. However, in game, it combines the thickness of plates, so that makes the mantlet very thick. People have been blaming its battle rating increase on it having a stabilizer, but the thing has had stabilizer for years. It's all the volumetric shells and Gaijin not wanting to model them correctly. You can see this with the Mark X Centurion. Its mantlet is made up a different way because it has a different gun. It's just one solid plate of the same thickness. Because it doesn't have the bonus of volumetric shells combining the various armor plates, it's actually a weaker mantlet, when in reality it should be stronger. So this tank is an SCRV-81 or Centurion Mark III with a 105mm gun, the same one on the Mark X, but it still has the old mantlet of the Mark III, meaning that it will have stronger armor than a normal Mark X, or SCRV-101 in this case. But enough of that nonsense, let's talk about the planes that are being passed to developers. Starting off with the US is the F5C. The likelihood that they're going to add this very next patch is very high. I'm pretty sure this suggestion was actually made before we got the F5A in the Chinese tree. Generally, I've looked into it, and the F5C, its performance to the F5A is very slim. They're basically the same jet. The C has a little dongle for mid-flight refueling, and I think it can carry out more bombs. For the British was the BAC TSR-2, which is a Mach 2 bomber with no guns and really big wheels. It could take out 6 1,000 pounds in the bomb bay and 2 to 4 1,000 pounds on hard points. It could also carry rocket pods, TV or radar guided Marta missiles, as well as 4 EW-177 nukes or 1 red bread bomb in the bay. I think this addition is very unlikely. Gaijin has strongly strayed away from adding supersonic bombers. I am very uneasy about them being added if they're actually going to add anything useful to the game. If you think about it in a situation, the only thing the bomber could do is run and bomb things. If it successfully bombs things, it will most likely have destroyed all the bases or done nothing at all. And in the case where it did not win the match instantly, it either would have been shot down or can only run and hope that it's faster than all the enemy jets as well as the missiles, because landing would be suicide. However, this one actually has a separate function, as it can carry rockets and whatnot, as well as air-to-air missiles, so it could be useful for CAS, or you could try to get some kills with it with the AA missiles. I don't know, what's your thoughts on supersonic bombers? Should they add them? Tell me below in the comments. For Japan, the suggestion was the M6A1 Sairan Kai. I think I butchered that pronunciation, but anyways, this is a trainer version of the M6A1 sub-based attacker. Generally, it doesn't seem too interesting, but it could be added as a lower level attacker for Japan. Having a top speed of 470 kilometers an hour at 4,000 meters. It had no offensive guns, but one 13.2 Type 13 turret in the back, and it could carry one 250 kilogram bomb, one 800 kilogram bomb, or one torpedo. So I guess 4.0 or maybe 3.7, maybe even lower for having no offensive guns. The Chinese suggestion passed on is for the SH-5, a seaplane bomber from the 70s. It had 4 hard points for 6,000 kilograms of torpedoes, depth charges, mines, or bombs, and was also designed to carry the C-1 101 anti-ship missile, however, that fell through, and had one defensive turret in the tail of two 32mm cannons. While generally it doesn't bring any technologies that aren't new to the game, it would be a very modern vehicle at a very low battle rating. Of course, a 4-engine float plane with one defensive turret isn't going to have nearly as much effect on air RB as the R3 does have on ground RB, but I do know still a good number of people would be upset by its presence, kind of ruining the immersion, even beyond that, adding another time-traveling vehicle. Personally, I have other gripes with the game that are much greater than a 4-engine bomber not being the right time zone. In fact, I don't even play ARB because of some of the issues with it. They could give the damn thing the anti-ship missiles and put it at 4.0, and I wouldn't really care. Sure, it would appear in ground battles a whole lot if it was the case, but people would have to play China to take it out, so that ain't happening anyways. One of my YouTube members was really psyched about this aircraft for Italy, the F-104S ASA. It is a 1980s mod of the F-104S that Italy used, and it had a new radar with better missiles. Everything else about the plane was the same. They just updated the radar and the missiles. I guess they were satisfied with the speed. It could take out 4 AIM-9Ls, but also 2 Selina Ospide 1A semi-active radar homing air-to-air missiles. Now, when it comes to air-to-air missiles and jets, especially ones from the 80s, I don't know a damn thing about them. What I hear are AIM-9Ls are really good, and that later radar-guided missiles are also really good. I would assume ones from the 80s could be quite effective. So when compared to everything else that we see in game, it's a bit advanced. Unless we see some improvements in technologies, I would say probably not to add a modification from the 80s. Though we did see a massive jump of F-100s fighting a Japanese jet from the 70s. Perhaps we could see the same thing happen where Italy happens to have the greatest jet in game for a little bit. Even then, I'm not sure if it would be the greatest jet in game, as F-104s don't like to turn. For France was the F-8EFN, which I don't really think needs a suggestion because we found a modeler had accidentally leaked the model with quite a few others, some of which we have seen in game. And just last patch we got the F8, an early version of it, but you could probably say, I think this one's coming. No need for a suggestion. Generally though, it doesn't seem that advanced. I guess it could have magic 1s and 2s, but was also armed with Martas and AIM-9Bs, which would be real harsh to start out with. Also in my notes I put French fries, which I hear are actually from Belgium, which is kind of disappointing. And finally for Sweden is the B-26. No, not that one. It is a Fokker G1, which is actually a Dutch plane that was exported to Sweden and armed with 4 Swedish 50 cals. But actually there's a bit of a difference in the story. You see, the only ones that found their way to Sweden were the Recon variant, which had no bombs, therefore Recon. They did, I'm pretty sure, still have the 50 cals, however. The bomber variants were planned to get to Sweden when they were finished, but the Germans showed up and ruined the fun. I would say to add the Recon variant as a premium because the bomber version was never finished, and we don't need to have more semi-paper vehicles in the game when we have a perfectly good option that is right there. However, unfortunately, the Recon variant is called the R26, and it would kind of ruin the enjoyable fun of disappointing the freeaboos who really want the B26 and click on the dev blog and they find out it's a Swedish plane. Well, Dutch plane that Sweden used. For naval, we'll start off the US, is the USS Mississippi, which is a New Mexico class dreadnought battleship. However, this suggestion isn't actually for it when it was in battleship configuration. You see, after the war, it was turned into a gunnery training vessel, having most of its turrets removed. Only turret number 4 remained, and that not even forever. Eventually, it was pulled out too, and placed in was some anti-air missiles, radar-guided ones. As interesting to see this in game would be, I would actually prefer if we did see the actual USS Mississippi, or really any other US battleship, because they kind of need some new battleships. There's other nations that need them more, but the US has also kind of been left in the shade, while Germany and Japan get all the battleships. Speaking of which, Germany also had a suggestion for a ship, the M-class light cruiser, a design for a fast light cruiser for raiding commerce. It was supposed to have 4 turrets of 250mm guns and about 30 to 50mm of belt armor. Now here's the thing, is it was never finished. Apparently construction started, but then a little bit later Germany got busy and the war started, so they scrapped it for parts. Personally, I would actually prefer for to see even World War I light cruisers for Germany before we start getting into unfinished vessels. Speaking of which, for Japan is another incomplete battle cruiser this time, the Amagi class battle cruiser, which was planned after the Kaga. Unfortunately, the Washington Naval Treaty came and killed the fun, and she was planned to be turned into a aircraft carrier. However, Mother Nature showed up to ruin the fun, and a earthquake damaged the dock she was in, and she sank. And the Japanese did not bother to raise the vessel out and fix the damage. The plan was for her to have 5 twin 41cm guns, but a lackluster AA, at least for a battle cruiser. Once again, I would say let's add actual vessels that were constructed fully and served before we get into the incomplete category. I know Japan had plenty of other battle cruisers and battleships that could fit the bill. For Italy, the suggestion is for the battleship Andrea Doria, which was a old World War I dreadnought battleship from 1916 and was refit in 1925. I don't care about the specs actually because Italy needs a battleship. Okay, fine, we'll talk about it anyways. It had 13 105 guns and centerline turrets. 3 had 3 guns and 2 had 2 guns, as well as had 16 6-inch guns. The belt armor was 250 to 80 millimeters, where the upper belt was only 220 millimeters. Generally, it looks like it would be a pretty good ship, especially with the centerline turrets, allowing you to have a more effective broadside. Finally, on to other suggestions we have for maps. Gotland. The suggestion is actually for a massive map that has a lot of stuff in it, and it could be used for air and ground forces. I guess naval in this case. Gotland is an island off the coast of Sweden, and there is no solid reason why it should be added opposed to literally any other island that saw conflict in the 20th or 21st century, or even the 19th century. Okinawa, Guam, Malta, Womido. The last one I had to look up is someplace in Korea. But there's plenty of other islands that did see combat that could be these large maps that people want. Hey, we even do like Puerto Rico or something. It's a bit more well known than some place in Sweden. For decals was another Swedish suggestion, though I'm less hostile to this one, is more Swedish decals. And Sweden had a good number of decals that aren't in game, and some of them look pretty nice. Mostly the roundels, or however you pronounce that word. Sweden does have a lack of decals, it's true. You can really say that about any of the minor nations, but hey, if there is options for Sweden, especially easy ones, like really, it's just like a PNG that you put on a tank. How hard can it be? For UI improvements was the suggestion, a very old one from 2016, to remove markers for planes in ARB for under 2.5 kilometers. Personally, I'm blind as a bat and really rely on those indicators. I didn't read the whole suggestion, but one of the main focuses for it seems to be that it's hard to sneak up on enemy aircraft when you have your name big in red above you. However, I have found myself, at least in 2016, sneaking up on plenty of aircraft. Back then at least, all you really had to do is turn your engine off. There's nothing they could hear, and if you came through the clouds, they wouldn't see you either. It's kind of fun. Spooked a lot of bombers that way. The other one is titled Armor Viewer Improvements, that's really just let us see internal armors. Currently, there is a system to see armor that is behind other armor. However, it would be nice if we could just examine the internal armors directly. Things like the secret bits of armor behind the T-34 85's gun mantlet. Like, just have another box that says internal armors only or something. For gameplay was a bomber's sphere of influence, and this one can be summed up pretty easily as if you fly near a friendly bomber, you get experience for being near it, in hopes to influence people to protect the bombers. I think it was a bit more complicated, like the bomber had to actually go bomb bases or something, so you couldn't just game the system and get free XP from flying to space. Generally, I think more so they should redo the way ARB works to the point in which bombers are useful, so protecting them is necessary for winning the game. Maybe not winning the game, but having an advantage or something. Make all the types of aircraft work with one another, not just have it be fighter team deathmatch and everything else just free kills. Another one that I kind of understand a bit is the option to turn off decorations, including bushes. Not a whole lot else to say about this, just have an option like you do have with historical skins. Turn off other players, including your own, I guess, decorations on the tank so they can't obscure weak spots or try to blend into trees. Can't really say if I'm for or against though. And the final suggestion under graphics and sounds is allow the use of things like reshade in War Thunder. Reshade is a thing that makes the game look better, maybe? Personally, I don't see any difference in the game that utilize this software. And from what I've heard, it's kind of already baked into NVIDIA cards, but I guess that does leave out AMD users. And that is all the suggestions for last month, the month of March. Be sure to tell me what you think. Would love to hear your thoughts on many of these suggestions. And if I did get anything wrong, I got most of this information from the suggestions themselves, but go ahead and correct me anyways. Now, before I end the video, first I'd like to thank my patrons, YouTube members, and Twitch subs. Thank you very much, guys. Remember, these guys who pay $5 or more a month get access to videos a little bit earlier than everyone else. So if you want to help me out a little bit and maybe get something yourself, be sure to click one of the links below. Now, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can of course hit me up down below or on my Discord If you've liked the video, be sure to hit the like button. If you didn't like the video, don't hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. I make War Thunder weekly news videos every Friday, at least I'm supposed to, when I'm not streaming Enlisted. I want to make Enlisted weekly news some time of the week. However, news for that game is still pretty limited, though I do hear that there's some more promotional events coming up, so keep your ears perked. And I like to make random videos throughout the week. Also, streams on Saturday are always planned, so be sure to hit the bell icon to be notified anytime I upload anything at all. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day. In the terms of bonus news, I actually have a question for you. Like I do stream War Thunder every Saturday, should I stream Enlisted on some planned day of the week as well? And what if I only did that on Twitch? That'd be interesting.